This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hello everyone, Andy Pickering here, and we have a very good show for you today. But before we get into it, need to shout out our new sponsor, Nexo. Yes indeed, are you ready to grow your wealth with the world's leading digital assets institution, Nexo? Well, you should be ready, because you can earn up to 12% on your digital assets with Nexo's high yield savings account. That's right. So treat yourself, treat your crypto, and treat your fiat with the industry's best crypto and fiat services, which include compounding interest paid out daily. There are 18 available cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, various stablecoins, and many more. And 3 fiat currencies are accepted, the euro, the pound, and USD. And Nexo has up to $375 million worth of insurance across all custodial assets. Top-ups and withdrawals are available at any time, and there are 0 fees for using the Nexo Earn Suite. So, are you ready to start earning? Of course you are. Simply go to nexo.io, and of course that is spelt NEXO.io. And now it's on with the show. My guest today is Benjamin Sauter. Ben is a lawyer at Kobre and Kim, a legal firm that specializes in international disputes and investigations, and the firm prides itself on its aggressive, trial-ready approach. And as I understand it, Ben's role is to aggressively defend clients in the cryptocurrency and commodity derivatives industries against high-stakes government enforcement actions. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Hello, Andy. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure is mine, Ben. Now, look, just before we get into the nitty-gritty world of legal enforcement and defense, I think it'd be good if you could please introduce yourself and give us the Cliff Notes version of your background, education, career path, location, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I'm a partner at a global law firm called Kobre and Kim. We specialize in resolving disputes and investigations generally with the cross-border component. I'm based in New York, but many of my matters involve many of our offices. My practice has been focused recently, or for the past 5 or 6 years, on resolving disputes in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. Many of those have been on the defense side. So we've represented ICO issuers in resolving disputes with the US SEC, which is the securities regulator here. We've been involved in helping traders and exchanges resolve disputes with the US Commodity Futures Trading Commission. It's the commodity regulator. And increasingly, we've been helping folks resolve disputes with US prosecutors, often involving fraud and money laundering charges and the threat of criminal sanctions. So I've really seen it all when it comes to the US government enforcement, which I think has been the most active really across the world in regulating the industry through enforcement, as opposed to, passing new laws or providing guidance to the industry about how it should regulate itself. We've also handled a lot of private disputes, which often coincide with some of the government investigations and disputes. And then I've also helped folks actually on the other side recover assets when problems have arisen, for founders and traders and funds that have been hacked or lost money through whichever way, helping them put together strategies across borders to recover assets, often actually using the resources of the government to help in those efforts. So I've really seen it all. yes, where I went to school. I was at law school at Harvard, and I've been a partner at Kobre and Kim for some time now.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you for that, Ben. And look, I was fascinated when, I first started preparing for this conversation, Ben, and just looking through your firm's website and your personal bio, and I was struck by some of the language used. I think one of the first words on the homepage of your firm's website is aggressive, and then in your bio it says something like Mr. Sauter is known for creative defense strategies when government investigations have festered or escalated, and clients are ready to adopt a more aggressive trial-ready stance. In these representations, Mr. Sauter is often deployed in a special counsel role to enhance negotiation dynamics with regulators and prepare for contested litigation. So, please forgive my slight dramatic tone there, but I just find it fascinating. Can you sort of put it all into context?
Yeah, when we talk about being aggressive lawyers, it doesn't mean pounding our fists on the table or screaming. That's not at all what we mean. What we mean is, as a firm, we try to think very creatively and outside the box, and we are willing to bring aggressive legal claims, intellectually aggressive legal claims, and push the boundaries of what has been done. And I've done that a number of times, both on the defense side and on the asset recovery side, filing claims that were the first to be done of its kind in the United States, and frankly even the world. So that we like to think outside the boxes when we litigate, and that includes our dealings with the government, which is not something that all law firms advertise or do. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is we don't have a transactional practice. We don't have a sort of forward-looking compliance practice. We are 100% focused on resolving disputes. So one of the things that means is we're often representing individuals or companies in a one-time problem. We're not trying to be their do everything counsel. We're trying to help them resolve a particular dispute. And if that means, taking positions that regulators sometimes find uncomfortable or inconvenient, we're not afraid to do that. And in fact, that's a large part of what my practice is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Ben, and really that sets up the context or sets the stage, if you like, for our conversation today. Because really, the reason that you came across my radar was a piece that you and two of your colleagues, I think, wrote for Brave New Coin, and the piece is called, or the title of the piece is that the US government is aggressively prosecuting crypto cases, how to defend yourself. And then the article summary reads, Thinking Beyond the Government Playbook, how crypto holders can proactively plan for and respond to aggressive US government enforcement tactics. So I guess today, I thought we'd just use that as a starting point to discuss, I guess, government enforcement actions against various players in the crypto ecosystem. So to begin with, Ben, do you want to just give us the what would you say is the high level takeaway from this piece that you guys put together?
Yeah, I might actually preface it with this. For those of your listeners who aren't familiar with the US legal system, there are different authorities within the country that have some role to play in policing the financial markets and the cryptocurrency markets as well. And there are civil regulators like the SEC and the CFTC and others, FinCEN, and there are criminal enforcers. And those are the ones at the end of the day you really want to not have involvement with, because they're the ones who can restrain your liberty and make your life very unpleasant. So the article that you referenced really is focused on some of the things that we're observing, some of the trends we're observing in the enforcement tactics by the US criminal authorities as their priorities have recently shifted to policing things like money laundering and tax evasion in the cryptocurrency space. They've been active. A number of sort of the wings of the federal prosecution apparatus has emphasized that this is a priority for them. And, because we represent individuals in the space and because we follow the news, we've seen some things sort of repeat themselves in how these prosecutions play out. And in the Cliff's Notes, summary version of that is we see kind of three things happening that aren't necessarily new or unique to the space, but the way in which they're being used is unique, and it's very troubling for defendants and people who end up being the target of criminal investigations. And those are, first of all, something that lawyers refer to as a dawn raid. That's when a SWAT team of agents shows up at your door at 4 or 5 or 6 in the morning before anybody's awake and knocks on the door a few times. And if nobody answers, kicks it down and arrests you. And one of the things that allows is a search and a seizure of a residence or a building or premises before anybody's had a chance to hide or lock away evidence. So it's a procedure of choice, and it allows. Andy, someone's ringing my doorbell in a very obnoxious way. Do you mind if I end that for just a second?
No problem. No problem, Ben. We'll pause here.
I will be right back.
This is just what happens on podcasts. Sometimes you'll be chatting away and the phone rings or someone's knocking on the door, pushing the doorbell. It is what it is.
Andy, I apologize for that. I was worried it was a dawn raid in response to this discussion.
So you're okay, Ben. You haven't been arrested. No, everything's all right.
I still have my liberty. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
So like I was saying, a dawn raid is usually the first step in this process. It involves a very quick, coordinated search and seizure of evidence, including of multiple people who may be involved in an investigation. And one of the key things that helps the prosecution and hurts a target of an investigation is it deprives them of access to their business records and potentially their funds and information that they will eventually need to defend themselves. And it's done in a way that they may not actually get it back for a long period of time. So if you are the subject of a dawn raid, and there have been a number of arrests made in this fashion recently in the industry, you can start out your criminal defense at a severe disadvantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But so Ben, when you talk about dawn raids, and if authorities are going to go to the trouble of putting together a team of agents or whatever it is to execute the dawn raid, that requires considerable resource. So that's not going to come. They're not going to come after maybe your sort of typical Coinbase user who is perhaps a little bit slow in declaring their crypto holdings to the IRS. So I guess what I'm saying is, what are the typical? I'm sure there's no typical client profile, but who are the kind of individuals or entities that are going to be targeted by these kind of enforcement actions?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. They're not going after the entire industry in this way. It tends to be, the higher profile targets of investigations. It could be folks who they think may be a flight risk. So these types of seizure, even if it's not at 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes it happens at an airport, a point of entry, but it's a coordinated arrest and detention. And it may be because somebody's high profile. It may be because they think if they don't seize that particular opportunity, they may not have another opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I'm just reading from the piece that you guys wrote because I just, the language is just superb when you say that prosecutors have developed a playbook of aggressive tactics that they routinely deploy to flip the evidentiary burdens of proof against individuals with substantial digital asset wealth, as well as to restrain their liberty and assets before a trial even takes place. And by recognizing these tactics and acting proactively, individuals with substantial digital asset wealth can reduce the real and present danger of this existential crisis in which they are forced to either effectively prove their own innocence or else forfeit their assets while awaiting trial in a jail cell. So almost quite dystopian stuff here, Ben.
I like your use of words. I had some debate about whether that was an appropriate way to frame what's going on, but I think you're right. It is for a lot of people who end up in that type of situation, dystopian. It's in many cases perfectly legal, but it is certainly unfortunate if you find yourself in a situation without access to information like your computers, and access to your assets to pay lawyers to then be expected to defend yourself. But one of the points we make in the article that I think is particularly unique and disturbing, frankly, in the cryptocurrency cases that we've been observing is the government's efforts to seek pretrial detention. So what typically happens in most white collar cases when somebody's arrested is they get brought, or frankly, any criminal case for that matter, is you get brought before a judge very quickly and bail terms are set. And in almost all cases in the United States, it's in our Constitution. You essentially have a constitutional right to bail. So usually what happens is you put up some money that will reasonably assure that you'll appear for your trial and other court appearances that may be necessary. And then you get out of jail pending your trial. That's typically how the criminal justice system works here. But there are two exceptions. One is if you're a danger to the community, like if you are a murderer, sometimes bail will be denied to you. Not always, but sometimes. That doesn't apply in the cryptocurrency context because we're talking about white collar crime allegations. But the other exception to pretrial detention is that you pose a real threat of being a flight risk. And one of the arguments the government has been making after it arrests somebody is they are a flight risk because they have access to assets that could be accessed overseas, and they may have substantial wealth in cryptocurrency assets, so they don't have any incentive to stay in the United States. They'll make this argument, and this is important, they'll make this argument even if they don't know that the target of the investigation has substantial crypto assets. For people who've been involved in the industry, they will make the argument that they may have access to substantial wealth. They may do some blockchain forensics and show transfers, although they won't be able to prove, whether those assets went to a third party or not. But they will say they may have access to assets outside the United States, and so should be detained pending trial. And what that does is it effectively flips a burden to a defendant to disclose all of his assets and try to convince a judge that he doesn't have access to assets outside of the United States. That can be prejudicial to a trial strategy for a variety of reasons. And it's being used by prosecutors to both get information out of a defendant that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get, but also effectively make a defendant prove a negative, which in many cases can be impossible and result in the defendant remaining in pretrial detention indefinitely, which obviously can be very difficult to defend a case that way.
Yes, I can certainly understand that. Well, look, Ben, let's just bring it back to, I guess, a more common example of what can happen. I guess really here I'm talking about the IRS and tax, right? Because there'll be millions of crypto holders. And look, here we're really specifically talking about people in the US, but there will be millions and millions of people in the US who do have crypto assets. And just because the industry is so new, there is not everyone has declared their holdings is the easiest way to say it, right? And so in the piece that you guys wrote, and by the way, listeners, I'll put a link to this piece in the show notes, but it's just on the front page of bravenewcoin.com. But you talk about, Ben, how in a move that portends a new wave of enforcement activity, the IRS recently served two John Doe summonses on Kraken and Poloniex, two of the bigger exchanges in the US. And I think you referenced that they've used this tactic against Coinbase in 2016. So do you want to just pick up the thread and explain the implications of what you're talking about here?
Yeah, I think it has a few implications. There's obviously a push within the U.S. IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, to bring in tax revenue from cryptocurrency holders. And one of the ways they've tried to figure out who might owe taxes is to serve these very broad subpoenas on the US-based exchanges to figure out who's made large transactions, which they will then most likely automatically compare to tax returns that have been filed. And they will have some automated process to figure out what taxes have been paid on those transactions. Typically what they do in that circumstance is begin with a bunch of letters, sort of automated generated letters that will go out to people telling them that they have taxes owed. It probably won't involve bond raids in the first instance. But one of, I think, the implications of this is they will also have names associated with a variety of different wallets and transactions coming out of those exchanges. And I think it's TBD, to be determined, how other prongs of the government will use that information to potentially link it up to other investigations that may be conducted, be it money laundering investigations or whatever it is. Most of the users will have nothing to worry about in that respect, but it will reflect a large trove of information going into the US government that will start to chip away at the anonymity of the blockchain. And when the government gets that kind of information, they're usually fairly effective at putting it to use, eventually. And I think that's part of the concern that the industry has with these kinds of efforts. It's not the IRS is not, the only branch of the government that's trying to get information like this. Other regulators, FinCEN in particular, has been trying to push through rules. They're not enforced yet, but they may be soon. That would force exchanges to report information about transactions on a going forward basis, and the beneficial owners of addresses. That's something that's been important to the money laundering enforcers in the United States. So there is a lot of focus on this. How it ultimately plays out is still to be determined. Like I said, most of the activity by the US government to date has just been enforcing old laws, not enacting new regulatory regimes. But I think the industry is bracing for more of that. And as they continue to gather information about those transactions, I think we'll see more impetus, not less.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I wanted to head next, Ben. And you sort of alluded to it at the beginning when you talked about all these different. The US is quite unique in some ways because it's it's a big country, a big population, all these different states, and different laws and regulations across different states, and then there's the federal level, and it's that old. While there's probably an increased appetite all around the world for regulators to, step up their overview of the cryptocurrency space, it's also that old that adage that politicians are not necessarily good at regulating technology industries, particularly industries that are really on the bleeding edge of technology or finance, which I think, you could certainly characterize DeFi as that. It'd be quite difficult for just your average aging politician to really get their head around the full implications of DeFi. So I guess in a roundabout way, I'm just saying, as much as this is difficult to do, I'd love it if you could sort of give us your impressions of what is happening across the regulatory front in the US at the moment.
I'll say a few things. First, I think most of the regulation of import happens at the federal level. There are creative initiatives in states like Delaware and Wyoming and Florida to, change some of the commercial laws to facilitate transactions in banking and things like that. But by and large, everybody needs to comply with the federal system. And that's where the real sort of regulations are that I think will broadly influence the state of the industry in the United States. There's not a lot of impetus for new rules, and the regulators, the SEC and the CFTC, have pretty clearly taken the position that they don't need a new framework to govern this, that the old rules do just fine, allowing them to police the industry, and people should just essentially act as if cryptocurrency slots in. That's where the disconnect is it's kind of fitting a round peg into a square hole. But that is the position that the regulators have taken. And the unfortunate reality of that is, in close cases, the industry doesn't know what to do. So they take a risk in innovating and hope that the regulators don't, after the fact, take a different view and essentially regulate by enforcement. That's kind of what's happening with Ripple right now and some of the other cases. And it's not how you would like to see, obviously, the industry regulated. At the same time, especially in the current environment, I think hoping for a new regulatory regime is sort of a case of be careful what you ask for, because I don't see a new regulatory regime getting passed in the United States that will be substantially more favorable to the industry anytime soon. There are some voices, some of the commissioners within the agencies, I think about it the right way and understand the importance of innovation and sandboxes and a little bit of leeway to promote some of the new things that are happening. By and large, it's not the prevailing view.
Sure. And what I think is also absolutely fascinating about the US, and look, I'm sure it's the same around the world, but there are some US politicians, for example, Elizabeth Warren and Brad Sherman, they have come out very strongly in favor of, I guess you would say, quite harsh or even draconian regulation against the use of cryptocurrencies. And then there are other politicians or senators, and I'm thinking of Cynthia Loomis, and also the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, who are also, very, very favorable very much in favor of crypto and blockchain, and the potential economic advantages that they could bring to the US or to Miami as a state, for example. So it feels like this, and the same for like Texas is being very open towards the Bitcoin mining community, and obviously Wyoming, I think you mentioned before, very, very encouraging crypto laws as well. So it feels like there's a big push and pull for talent and economic activity, and don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, Don Stump and the CFTC and Hester Pierce of the SEC have been voices in favor as well. So there is a healthy debate. I don't want to be too pessimistic. There is a healthy debate, and we see actually a fair bit of interplay between former company executives having important positions with the government and vice versa, which I think will contribute to a sort of mutual understanding and growth. So I'm not pessimistic. I just don't think it's going to happen, in the near term. And the reality in the near term is going to be, bracing for these kinds of government enforcement rather than just clarity, from above in a favorable way.
And just as we start to finish off this part of the podcast, Ben, I'd love to get your thoughts on a few quick things. Elon Musk, right? So he has been accused of effectively pumping and dumping Bitcoin and certainly pumping Dogecoin simply through the use of Twitter. Just by sending some tweets, he appears to be able to move the market, which is quite amazing and a little bit alarming as well. I know you've talked a little bit about this in the past. What do you think of Elon's tweets? Is he sort of playing a little bit fast and loose with the markets, or is it fine?
It is. I'm not going to pass judgment on Elon. I will say he's, I think, ushered us into a new reality where, individuals through social media platforms can have a very important impact on the financial markets. My personal view, and in cases I've handled, my view is that simply impacting a market is not illegal. There has to be a much higher level of intent. So without evidence of spreading falsehoods through the market, or lying to the market, I think the current regime, my view is, doesn't prohibit that kind of conduct. But I can also understand how some people in the industry may not view it as fair or potentially requiring a different set of rules. But under the current environment, I haven't seen anything wrong with it. It doesn't mean I think it's right. And I think when you have that kind of a voice, it's important to pay attention to sort of how your words are acted on.
Sure, and it's quite difficult to interpret the real meaning of a meme when it's tweeted as well. So, yeah,
market moving emojis. Yeah,
indeed. What's your? Do you have a personal view on the crypto industry or blockchain in general? Do you sort of are you just engaging with it purely from as a lawyer, engaging with your clients in a sort of objective way, or do you engage with the ecosystem yourself?
I do engage with it, and I have to have at least a sort of working understanding of what the different platforms are and the wallets and the different technologies. I think to have productive conversations with my clients, they generally expect that they don't have to teach me about it when we get on the phone. I do try to stay abreast of those technologies, and actually am able to employ some of them for my clients in my work. I won't get too into the details on that now, but I do have a pretty good appreciation and working fluidity with a lot of the blockchain tools that we can deploy on the asset recovery as well as the defense side.
Awesome. All right, well, let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the very famous crypto conversation hot take round.
Grow your wealth with the world's leading digital assets institution, Nexo. Earn up to 12% on your digital assets with Nexo's high yield savings account. Treat yourself, your crypto and fiat with the industry best crypto and fiat services, featuring compounding interest paid out daily, 18 available cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, stablecoins, and more. 3 fiat currencies are accepted: Euro, Pounds, and USD. Up to $375 million insurance on all custodial assets, top-ups and withdrawals available at any time, and 0 fees for using Nexo Earn Suite. Start earning at nexo.io. That's nexo.io.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Benjamin Sauter. Ben is a lawyer at Kobre and Kim, a legal firm that specializes in international disputes and investigations. And Ben is working with clients across the cryptocurrency ecosystem. So if you ever do get in trouble with the US government based on something you've done with crypto, Ben is probably a good person to call. But Ben, I like to finish each podcast with just a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Happy to help.
All right, I just want your hot takes here, Ben. Just quick, snappy answers. Where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I love multi-coins. I think if you can multiply money, that's a good place to be.
Fair enough. All right, well, Ben, what would you say is your firmest conviction, a crypto opinion?
HODL, HODL. Hold on for dear life.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, Ben, look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. Pure speculation, but can you imagine what a blockchain world looks like in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I think we're all paying for trips to the moon on our appreciated blockchain.
Yes, look, and if anyone can, Elon will make it happen, won't he? Well, similarly, Ben, William Gibson, sci-fi author, he said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
An example aside from the blockchain, I think the blockchain itself is a good example. There's a lot of the United States, it's still not plugged in. Certainly that's the case in the rest of the world, but I've found it a rewarding part of my practice to watch, for example, the Latin America market pick it up recently. And I think, as distributed ledger technology becomes more distributed, we'll start to see it more and more.
Couldn't agree more. All right, we're almost done here, Ben, but time to zoom out, time to get a little bit weird. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I think when it comes to financial transactions, I think we're well on the path to a utopia. I think when it comes to, things like climate change and the like, we I think have some work to do.
We do indeed. All right, let's finish this off, Ben. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
Dune, for sure.
Oh,
the
nice.
book, not the movie.
Well, there's a new version, a new movie of Dune is coming this year, I believe.
Well, I really want to like the Lynch version. I really want to like it because I like most of what he does. I think, Dune gets a bad rap movie-wise, but I'll keep an open mind.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Ben. This has been, very interesting indeed. So look, nothing else to say really except to hand the microphone back to you. And please, any sort of final advice you have for crypto holders in the US, please give it to them and tell people where they can find your law firm or follow you on social media or any of that good stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity for a closing remark. I would just say this, and this is in the article, but the point of the article we put out was not to scare people about the U.S. government, but rather to tell them there are things you can do to avoid a scenario where you've been deprived of your computers with no way to fight back. And that's ultimately the moral of the story is we'd like to help people who suspect or fear that they might be the subject of an investigation to take proactive steps so that they're in the right place to fight back, if and when that becomes necessary. Hopefully it never does become necessary, but there are things you can do right now to position yourself that may be prudent. But you can Google my name, Ben Sauter, on Google. Our law firm will come up. A lot of my opinion pieces and things like that will come up. And I think I'm reachable by email if the conversation would be helpful.
Awesome. Hey, thanks very much for your time today, Ben. All the best and bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, there you go. That was Ben Sauter from Kobre and Kim, legal firm in New York. Yeah, interesting guy. That was a good chat. I guess the takeaway there is don't run afoul of the various enforcement arms of the US state, because, you really don't want agents knocking on your door at a dawn raid kind of time. Anyway, so I'm sure that won't happen to you as long as you don't engage in nefarious activities such as money laundering and rug pulls and that kind of behavior. All right. Well, I hope you did enjoy that. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. And should also just mention again that the link to that piece that was written by Ben and his colleagues should be in the show notes, depending on what podcast platform you're on. But as I say, you can just find it on bravenewcoin.com. I think it's still on the front page at the moment. All right, that's us for today. We are out of here. Thanks for listening, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin. See ya.